I think the best way to show you or explain the way that I made this boiler is to show you the other two pieces. So this is an air compressor tank. You can see the wheels. And this is a propane tank, 20-pound gas grill bottle. This is just a pot heater, or it's what I use to cook off the insulation from big fat copper wire with a little wood fire. But anyway, what I did was I cut a propane tank, I cut an air compressor tank. The first thing I did was I made the faceplate, which is got a flange, a round flange on the outside. It could be square, it could be any shape you want, but you got a flat plate of steel. The first thing you do is you weld that propane tank to it, and you got to pressure test it. You have to. So you have to weld in some bungs or whatever you got to do to pressure test it. Make sure you want to leak check this thing. So there's going to be a cutout here and a cutout here. One is for the intake, for the fire to get shot into it, and the other is for the exhaust to come out. So the idea is that the fire goes up and around like this, and then it comes back out. And the exhaust stack is out the front, but the temperature up here, this water jacket up here, which is the thickest part. So this one is oriented concentric, but on the burner, it's actually offset downward. So if this is 12 o'clock and that's the sky, you want the bulk of the water up here. And so that's so that there's, the hot water is up top, the cool water is coming in from the bottom. Now, once you weld that plate around this perimeter 100% and leak check it, then you can orient this outer shell over it with that offset like I mentioned, and then weld this face to the flange. Now, mind you, this is all just kind of rigged up, preliminary testing. None of it's permanent. It's just, there's so many bugs to work out of something like this. Now, that rusty section right there is the faceplate. Obviously, that's the intake, the burn tube, and this is the exhaust. So in my case, it's a stainless, 90 that I made, and then just a sleeve of pipe sticking up above. And so this is the firebox right there, and yes, it does need to be insulated. Now this shell on the outside, that is just a washing machine drum. It's a washing machine drum packed full of fiberglass. It's sitting inside of a generator frame. This is a cut propane tank right here with a pot lid on top. And this is here to redirect any volcanoes that come blowing out of it. So there's a 1-inch pipe nipple, or 3/4 maybe, welded in there. And you need this for expansion. You need to have some high-mounted degas and expansion reservoir. If I was building this all over again, I would make that a tank, probably an air compressor tank off a big rig, since those are so easy to come by and they've got ports all over and you don't have to do anything to them. Maybe just weld a fill port into it. But this thing is definitely going to have, at times, it's going to be boiling. So the gases are going to be boiling up, and it will, up through that pipe, it will launch. It will splatter the bottom of that lid and just spray all over. It'll pour out a big amount of glycol, and it'll cost you money. So, like I said, that chunk of crap right there is just to redirect the force and try to salvage some of the coolant that blows out of it if something goes wrong with the pump and it starts to boil over. Now in the back, you got just a return line going into the bottom, so it's not cold water. It comes back to the hand. It feels just as hot as anything, but this is the cold return, and then the heat is up on the top, comes out of this fitting here into a pump. This is a brand new Taco 3-speed pump, and it had a fitting right here. I just had it apart because this backflow preventer failed to open, so I had no pump flow. So I just said, hey, I don't need the damn thing. I just deleted it. So I got a pump on a thermostatic switch. You absolutely have to have this. I'm getting ahead of myself. So this goes down in. Eventually that'll get buried in the ground, but it goes inside of a camper to a radiator that's on a box fan underneath the floor area, and that blows hot air up underneath all the plumbing. It keeps the tanks from freezing in the winter, keeps the floor warm, heats the house, quote, quote. Things that I understand about this now, you need to have a thermostatic controlled switch, a thermistor. You do not want this thing circulating all the time. It just won't get hot enough. You will not get much BTU out of 90 degree or 100 degree water. It won't make a difference. You need it to be 170, 180 going through those tubes. I have not had a failure with any of these yet. This is just black plastic water pipe. I am absolutely certain that you need to have a drain, a bottom drain, because you're going to be emptying this thing out over and over when you're figuring out the bugs. You're going to have a fill port with a garden hose, the ability to block it with a valve there. So this, if you hooked up a garden hose here and turned it on, you would pressurize, but you would end up pressurizing it backward into the pump. Unless you had that backflow preventer that I just took out, but it's caused me more problems than it was worth. So there's a second valve that is right here. So I do have the ability to block this whole system off and force garden hose water through there. And that is required to force the air out. This pump will be airbound. It will not push anything from high to low when the system is airbound. So I had to have force to shove that down. Once you get the heating loop purged of air and full of water, and then you can just start adding straight glycol to this tank right here, and they will mix and you'll get to that antifreeze level that you need. Never ever think you can run one of these on straight water, because even after you drain it, I had straight water stay in there. I drained the whole system, but I had a little bit of water staying there, and it froze and snapped the pump shaft off on one of these Taco pumps, and these are not as cheap as they used to be. So this is just an eBay waste oil burner with a Parker hydraulic valve. Right now I'm running just straight diesel fuel, old red diesel that was in a parts truck where it's all black, and I don't want to run it in anything except this kind of thing. It's just a regular bolt valve or whatever it is. That's some maple syrup tubing. And so you can richen the mixture and you can increase the air independently. And that's, but you can see running too rich is just going to be smoky. So when you get it right, it cleans up. Obviously, the more air pressure you put to it, well, the faster you run through your air, number one. Number two, the more stable the flame, the more aggressive the flame. I'm trying to run this on as low an air pressure as possible because I don't want my compressor running much. At this temperature, my compressor wants to trip the breaker if it starts back up. So I've got 3 tanks that size. That's just a tank. I've got 3 tanks that size. Only one of them is a compressor, and they're all linked together in series. It takes about 20 minutes to get to 130, and then I shut the compressor off, and I'm running a regulator. Right now. I'm at 20 psi. I find below that is not a very stable flame if there's high wind, and above it just runs through the air and the fuel too fast. I have not tried this in a siphon format yet, but that is next. What I want is to have 2 lines going down into buckets. I want to be able to put a 5-gallon bucket of diesel and a 5-gallon bucket of waste motor oil and have balance valves so that I can start up on red fuel and then switch over to straight motor oil, or maybe a motor oil diesel blend, or maybe an old gas blend to burn cheap junk fuel, because I have hundreds of gallons of it. So little by little I'm getting the thing dialed in, and I'll eventually, this is a frame made out of fence posts. I'll eventually put tin around it and a roof on it and have it not look so stupid. I'll insulate it better and all those things. Thanks for watching.